that time again. It's Math with Mrs. Peters, the crazy cat lady of Hiram High School. Today's topic, solving quadratic inequalities. Now, I want you to remember back when in Algebra 1 we talked about inequalities and the symbols that we use. Alright, so I'm going to draw out this little chart. Okay? And we have a couple of things we need to pay attention to. We have solid dots when we graph, and we have open dots when we graph. So this is if we graph something. Okay, now, when we write our inequality out, we use set notation, which is the greater than equal to sign, or the less than and equal to sign, or just the greater than sign, or the less than sign. Right, and remember, y'all, the small end points at the smaller thing, and the large end, this part here, points at the larger whatever. Doesn't matter what a number is. A is smaller than B also means B is larger than A. So pay attention to the meaning of these things, and it would be a lot easier. Now that's set notation, and we also had interval notation. Okay, and that was brackets or parentheses. Okay? That's most of the information we need in order to write things up correctly using the correct notation. Now, the other piece of information we're going to need is how to solve quadratic equations. Okay, now, quadratic equations, you've already had 2 or 3 lessons on that, so now we're going to just jump into quadratic inequalities. So, with that said, let's look at an example. X squared plus x minus 12 is greater than 0. It's an inequality. The first thing you're going to do is you are going to solve this as if it was an equation. I need to know what x's make this equal to 0, because 0, those places on the number line are very important. Right now, I'm going to draw out the number line. I need to know where those zeros are on my number line. I don't care what method you use to solve this quadratic, whichever method you use, completing the square, square root, quadratic formula, factoring, I don't care which way you use, as long as you don't do it by observing somebody else's paper, which is called cheating. So I trust y'all to use one of the qualified 4 methods of solving a quadratic. And you're going to notice that once you solve it, you're going to get x is equal to 3 or x is equal to negative 4. Now, that's the first thing you got to do. The second thing you got to do is you got to go put that on your number line. So I'm going to put negative 4 on my number line, and I'm going to put positive 3 on my number line. And you look at it and you go, oh, okay, cool. Negative 4 is to the left of positive 3, which is the way it should be. These are boundary lines, guys. These numbers are boundary lines where our inequality is equal to 0. Right? Somewhere to the left, the middle, or to the right, I have numbers that make this greater than 0 or less than 0. So what you're going to do is you're going to choose a number out of between each of these boundaries. All right? So I'm going to choose, I don't know, I think I'm going to choose negative 5. I'm going to choose 0. That's a good number if you can get it. And I am going to choose 5. Now, you say, what are you going to do with those? You are going to actually plug them back in to this equation. You're going to plug them into x squared plus x minus 12. And we're going to see what happens when you do that. Okay, what type of numbers? Do I get numbers bigger than 0? Or do I get numbers smaller than 0? All right? So, and you got to do that 3 times. So I'm going to write this down 3 times. And in those little parentheses, I'm going to put -5, -5, 0, 0, 5, and 5. Now let's calculate, guys. You have a calculator. Use your calculator and calculate what this is going to equal. Right, so what you should find out that you get, right, when you calculate this little piece right here, you get 8. You calculate this right here, you get -12. And when you calculate this piece right here, you get +18. Now, remember, what we're looking for is numbers that are greater than 0. All right? So, this is a positive number. This is a negative number. And this is positive over here. I want the numbers larger than 0. Right? I want the numbers larger than 0. And those numbers are in here because a positive number is larger than 0. And those numbers are here because those numbers are greater than 0. I have open dots here and here because that has no line underneath it. Now, I'm going to write my answer in interval notation. That means using parentheses and brackets. Okay? I have a parenthesis, because it's an open dot, -4, and I'm going to infinity in a negative direction. And I have an open dot at 3, and I'm going to infinity in a positive direction. So here is my answer with a big happy U between them because it's a union between two sets. And that's solving a quadratic inequality. If you have questions, take your time, write them down, and let's talk about them when I see you next. Y'all have a good evening. Bye-bye.